Well, for more on this peace initiative at the UN Security Council and the Syrian crisis, I'm joined from Burbank, California by Majid Rafizadeh. He's a political scientist and a U.S. foreign policy and Middle East analyst. Majid, welcome.
It's great to be with you, Asieh.
So let's talk about this peace initiative at the UN Security Council. Certainly a show of unity, a rare show of unity, I should add. But is this really more about symbolism and not so much substance?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Asieh. I think it's, first of all, now there is an issue of terrorism, which is becoming more priority than the Syrian crisis. And in order to address the terrorism or the violence which is being conducted by the Islamic State, there is no way unless you really address the crisis in Syria. You have to resolve the crisis in Syria, then you can address the symptoms of the disease or the Islamic State. I think this is one reason that they're trying to start a new platform. But unfortunately, I have to say that when you have a new plan from global power or from regional power, it usually reflects the national interest of those powers who put the plan ahead. So it's not really, it doesn't really reflect the interest of the Syrian people, but it reflects the interest, the economic interest or the geopolitical interest of regional or global powers who propose the plan. And we've seen this before in the peace conference in Syria, that really plans which comes from the powers, they're not going to be lasting. They're not going to resolve the crisis in Syria. We need a more comprehensive plan.
But this is not just a plan floating around by 2 or 3 countries. This is the entire UN Security Council.
I agree, but the gap, I think, between these actors or players in different, which have stakes in Syria is really too deep to breach. Iran is, for instance, Iran and Russia now offering some kind of transitional government that maybe the President Bashar al-Assad will be removed in power. But the issue here is that although Iran and Russia are not married to an individual, to President Bashar al-Assad, but they are married to the Alawite system which preserve their national and economic system, economic interests. So they're not going really to change their position completely vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia and United States. There might be some reconciliation, but the problem is that, again, the gap is too deep between, let's say, the pro-Assad groups, Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and the anti-Assad groups, let's say. So I think we have to address that issue. And just last point, Asieh, that there is also, it's not the matter of national UN security members or the UN General Assembly. It's really, there is other aspects of the conflict, which is the rebel groups. Now there are more than 1,200 rebel groups inside Syria. So even if those powers reach an agreement, how you're going to satisfy the 1,000 different ideologies inside Syria which have been fighting, and now they have consolidated their power in different territories inside Syria?
Well, let me ask you, we were talking about Iran and Russia. Javad Zarif, Foreign Minister Zarif, met with his Russian counterpart in Moscow. They both say they support Assad in this conflict, and it should be up to the Syrians to decide their destiny and their fate. So how is that going to complicate peace efforts when Syrian oppositions argue Assad is actually part of the problem?
That's absolutely right. Here's the problem: is that there are some groups that they see Assad completely. He completely should be out of the game. He should resign. He should be brought to the International Criminal Court, and they don't really agree with the plan that you can have Assad retire and live peacefully somewhere. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the gap is too deep. So, but the issue that you see Iran and Russia now, they are trying to bring other countries or other players to the table, is that they are not in a comfortable position. Iran has been hemorrhaging billions of dollars on Assad to keep him in power, and I think it's not in their economic interest to see the civil war going. So they are not in a comfortable position, but they don't want also to completely change their geopolitical interest in Syria.
All right, clearly a very complicated situation here. Majid Rafizadeh, thank you so much for your time, sir.